there everybody, and welcome back to the Blossom Crochet channel. In this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to make this beautiful Granny Merge shawl. I'm just going to show you this one that I've worked up here. So obviously it is a triangular shawl, I'm hoping you can tell that. And it's a 4-row repeat, although you can adjust that to whatever you want, but I've done it as a 4-row repeat. So it is a mix of the traditional and solid granny stitches. However, at the point on the shawl it swaps over each time you get to the point, so one half will be granny, traditional granny, the other half will be solid granny, and you'll do that for a few rows and then you'll switch it up, and it will always change at the halfway point, at the point of your triangle. This was done using the Northern Lights yarn, but I was having trouble finding that. It seems to be out of stock in a lot of places. There are still some shades available, and I will leave a link in the description to the shades that are still available. But if you were looking for an alternative, then a Shapey's Whirl would be beautiful for this shawl, and also things like the Jewel Spun, and just any yarn really. You can use absolutely any yarn that you like. I would just recommend going up a hook size, or at least a half hook size. I used a 4.5mm for this particular one, and it's got a really nice drape to it. So yeah, I'm hoping you can really see the detail with these stitches. It's a really simple, mindless one once you get into the repeat. So yeah, you can see a bit better there now that it's folded up. But this is a twist on the blanket pattern that I released a few years ago for the original Granny Merge blanket. And that was obviously a square blanket, and I had so many requests asking if that could be done as a triangular shawl. And so I thought I'd better finally get around to actually doing that. So yeah, this is just a twist on that Granny Merge blanket pattern. So for the purpose of the tutorial, I'm going to be using the James C. Brett Driftwood DK, and I'm going to be using a half hook size up, so I'm going to be using a 4.5mm. So you want to start with your slip knot on your hook. And we're going to do a chain of 5. So yarn over and pull through. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. You're then going to slip stitch into the first chain to make a ring. So insert your hook into that first chain, yarn over and pull through both of those loops to make a slip stitch, and then you've got a centre ring here to work our next set of stitches into. So you want to chain 4, so 1, 2, 3 and 4, and that is going to count as a treble and a chain 1. So remember, I'm working in UK terms, so all of the stitches in this pattern are going to be UK trebles, and in the US these will be your double crochets, so just make sure you remember that. So that chain 4 counts as 1 treble and a chain 1. So into this centre ring now you want to put 3 treble crochets. So yarn over, insert into the centre, yarn over and pull up, and you'll have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's 1, and we want 2 more, all into that centre ring. 2, and 3. Okay, so at this point we want to create the point of our triangle shawl, so we will do that by chaining 2, and then again back into this centre ring we're going to put 3 trebles. So again, yarn over, back into that centre and do your 3 trebles. That's 1, 2 and 3. So these 2 sets of 3 trebles here are going to count as the start of our granny cluster. But we then want to finish off with a chain 1 and 1 treble back into that centre ring. So now the start and the end are the same. So we had the chain 4, which was 1 treble in chain 1, our 3 trebles, chain 2, 3 trebles, and then we want to finish with the chain 1 and 1 treble. And obviously it's not going to look like very much at the moment, but that is the very beginning round for your shawl. Okay, so this is the first round where we will switch between granny, traditional granny and solid granny. So you want to chain 4. Again, that counts as a treble and a chain 1. You're going to turn, and then straight into that very first chain 1 space, you're going to put 3 treble crochets. So that is going to count as your granny cluster. So 3 trebles into that chain 1 space. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then you're going to jump across the top of the treble cluster here and work into our corner chain 2 space, and you're going to do 1 granny cluster, so 3 trebles into that chain 2 space. So 1, 2, and 3. So we're at our corner space now. So we want to create our new corner by chaining 2. And we're now going to switch to solid granny. So at this corner point, when we switch back to solid granny, you are going to only put 2 trebles. So on your traditional granny side, you will have 3 trebles in the corner and the chain 2, and then when we work back up for our solid side, you will only put 2 trebles. So we've chained 2, and now we're doing 2 trebles into the chain 2 space. You're then going to put 1 treble in each of the next 3 stitches. So into the top of these 3 trebles, you're going to put 1 treble in each. So yarn over, insert and go through the whole of the stitch, making sure to get the V. So put 1 treble into the top of those 3 stitches. And then again, we're at our chain 1 space. So because we're on the solid side, we only want 2 trebles in this chain 1 space. So 1, and 2. So then we want to finish off the round in the same way that we started. So you want a chain 1 and a treble back into that space. So that is round 2. That is how you should look at the end of round 2. So we will start getting that beginning of the traditional granny versus the solid granny. Okay, so now you're ready to chain 4 again. And turn. And then we're working down a solid granny side. So 2 trebles into the chain 1 space. So 1 and 2. And then you'll put 1 treble into the top of each stitch along. So again, making sure that you're working through the whole of the stitch. Okay, so that's 1 treble in each of those stitches. We're now at the corner space again. So we want to finish the solid side by doing 2 trebles into the chain 2 space. So 1 and 2. Chain 2. And then again, we're at the halfway point. So we want to start back up with our traditional granny. So into the corner chain 2 space, you're going to start your traditional granny with 3 trebles. So 1 granny cluster into the corner space. 2 and 3. Chain 1, skip over the top of that granny cluster and put your next granny cluster into that chain 1 space. So 3 trebles. Okay, chain 1. And then again, you've got another granny cluster here to skip over, and you're going to work into that end space. So granny cluster into that final space. 1, 2, and 3. And then again, always make sure you finish with a chain 1 and a treble on its own back into that same space. Okay, so that is how you should be looking at this point. So you can do as many rounds as you want before you switch over again, but I like to do 4 rounds the same and then change it up. So again, now we will chain 4 and turn and work back down with our traditional granny. So granny cluster into that very first chain 1 space, chain 1, skip to your next chain 1 space and granny cluster, and work that all the way to your corner or your point, however you want to call it. Always remembering to do a chain 1 in between your granny clusters. And when you get to your corner or the point of your shawl, you will do a granny cluster in the chain 2 space. Okay, make sure you do your chain 2 to create the new point. And then it's time to switch back to the solid granny. So on the solid granny side, you will only have 2 trebles in the corner space. So 1 and 2, and then 1 treble into the top of each stitch from the previous round. Okay, so I've worked 1 treble into the top of each of those stitches, and then I'm at that final space where I will do 2 trebles. So you do just need to keep reminding yourself of the difference between the solid side and the traditional side, because the stitch count on each side will be different in this final space. And then remember to do your chain 1 and another treble in that same space. Okay, so I never count this very first row that we did here as a row. I just count that as like our setup row. So I class now that I have done 1, 2 and 3 rows. So I'm going to do 1 final round now before I switch. So I will chain 4 and turn, and then again work down my solid side and my traditional granny. So hopefully you will be able to do that now. And then I will meet you once you have completed this round, and I will show you how to swap so that we get the solid side on this side next time and the traditional on the other. So I will meet you in just a second. Okay, so I've completed that 4 rounds now and I'm ready to switch. Obviously you can do more or fewer if you want, but this is how you will switch between the 2. So chain 4 as normal and turn. We're going to switch this time between the traditional to the solid. So we've chained 4 and then into this chain 1 space, you're going to work as if this is now a solid side. So you're going to do 2 trebles in that chain 1 space. 1 and 2, and then you're going to work 1 treble into each of the stitches and each of the chain 1 spaces down this side. So 1 treble into the top of the 3 stitches, 1 treble into the chain 1 space, and then back into the stitches. So you'll work that all the way to your corner space. So 1 treble into each stitch along and into each chain 1 space as well. Okay, so I've worked that to my corner space. So we're still on the solid, so we're going to do 2 trebles into the chain 2 space, chain 2 to create the new corner, and now we're switching from the solid to the traditional. So you're going to do 3 trebles, so you're going to do a granny cluster into your corner space. So 3 trebles there. And you're going to chain 1, and you're going to skip 3 trebles. You're going to skip 1, 2, 3, and then 3 trebles into that 4th stitch along. So granny cluster into that stitch. Chain 1, skip 3 and cluster into the 4th. Apologies if you can hear that rustling sound. We've recently got a kitten and she's just reaching that very adventurous stage. So again, you're going to continue that all the way along, and then I will meet you when you get towards the end of the round. So cluster, chain 1, skip 3 stitches, and then cluster. Okay, so I've just done my granny cluster here. I've got 3 stitches left and my chain. So you're going to skip the final 3 stitches and work a granny cluster into that end space. 1, 2, and 3. And then again, always finish with your chain 1 and 1 treble back into that same space. Okay, so that is how you should look now that you have switched. So again, now you'll do as many rounds as you like with the traditional and the solid, and then you will switch back again. So again, like I say, I will always like to do 4. So that's the first round done since I've swapped. And then I will do my traditional and my solid, and I will work up another 3 rounds like this. And then I will switch back. So I'll meet you one final time where we will switch over again. But that is literally the pattern. That is how simple it is. So you'll swap in the middle each time and then swap every 4 rows between the 2. So that is literally it. So I'll meet you in just a second where we will swap one final time, and then that will be the end. So I've completed another 4 rounds now, and I'm ready to switch back again. So I'm going to chain 4, turn, and then I'm switching from solid to traditional. So in my first chain 1 space, I will be doing 3 trebles, so a granny cluster. And then again, chain 1, and just as before, you will skip 3 stitches and work your granny cluster in the 4th and work that all the way down. And then in your corner space, you will do granny cluster, chain 2, and then switch back to your solid. So then you will do 2 trebles in the corner for this side, and then 1 treble in each stitch and each chain 1 space all the way up the other side. And then, like I say, you'll be able to just repeat that as many times until you either run out of yarn or your shawl reaches the size that you want it to be. So I really do hope that you've enjoyed the tutorial, and if you have, please remember to subscribe and also give the video a thumbs up. But that is it, and I will see you for another tutorial really soon. Thanks as always for watching, and bye for now.